Certified Transmission built its reputation on the job done right.
It means hard work, honesty, and integrity.
And quality service that makes customers feel confident and secure in their vehicles.
At Certified Transmission, our expertly trained technicians diagnose, service, and repair transmissions.
And together, we ensure our customers leave satisfied and worry-free.
Certified Transmission, the job done right at the right price.
Find a location near you at certifiedtransmission.com.
For the first time ever on 60 Days In.
We're going in
as a united front.
We signed up for this.
Would you?
60 Days In. New episode tonight at 9. Part of The Pursuit, a crime and investigation event only on A&E.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, they use their Indigenous heritage to obtain influence, benefits, and political power. But they're not Indians. They're racial identity thieves. We'll talk about the podcast Pretendians from Canadaland. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Rebecca. And
finally, our resident Doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin.
Yeah.
This is Thursday's program.
It is.
What's coming up on Monday's show?
So on Monday, we're going to be talking about the investigative podcast Fallen Angels.
Oh, that's exciting.
You should be excited. It's your job.
Well, yeah.
Can I mention something? Because it's been 5 years. I just realized this is the 5-year anniversary of something.
Absolutely.
5 years ago, I had my tumor removed.
Oh,
wow.
And
5 years ago today?
Yeah, as a recording day. And I will let everybody know, because in case I haven't mentioned
was this part 1 or part 2 of the tumor?
This was when the whole tumor was finally removed. Yeah, because I had an original surgery.
And then a second one.
Yeah, and they looked at it, says, may not be tumorous, go back in. Second one was the disaster where it destroyed my voice.
It was
and for a year,
surgery, yeah.
Do you want to tell my story?
No. It was the scarier one.
Yeah. So anyway, I do want to let everybody know, again, and thank everybody for all the support they gave over the years. But I remain undetectable, and the doctor says, you're good. So, they never say, like, you're cured from cancer, but they certainly, like, move you into a new section where it's like, you don't need to get the ultrasound every year. Just come in for a quick blood test and you're good. So I can say that part of my life is over. And for those who have been wondering, I just want to let you know.
So this is very exciting, Kevin. Like, this has been a big chapter, and we can close the door on it somewhat.
Yeah, we can turn the page on that. And
I'll never forget when you were in the room by yourself, Kevin.
The lead-lined room,
yes.
Because I was irradiated. Instead of going for like weeks and weeks of direct beam radiation like some people do, I took one radioactive iodine pill, and I sat there for 3 days and just let it do its work. And I got photoshopped from the inside out from my thyroid cancer. And that's also where I clogged the toilet.
That's what I was remembering.
The radioactive toilet.
And that one guy had to come in. And you're like, there's a situation.
This poor janitor.
Had to suit up.
I'm sorry to laugh, but that was the part I was remembering.
He's like, I'm the plumber at Chernobyl.
All Kevin could think about was what the WMUR news story would have been that night if they had to evacuate the hospital because he had clogged the toilet.
It's like, what are they going to do?
How would you have reported that when you were in there?
They'd have to throw off the mop?
Yes.
Yeah.
How would you have reported that?
I'm just flying over the hospital right now, and I'm looking down, and I see all sorts of people running away. We heard that it was radioactive crap and sewer water that's flooded the cancer ward of all places.
I think that's called an active shitter situation.
It's an active shitter situation.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Top that.
All right.
All right.
I feel like that needs to be a shirt in the Crime Writers On merch.
Active shitter.
An active shitter drill. Yeah.
I'm an active shitter.
Okay. All right. We have a podcast we need to talk about, guys. I think we should do that. What do you think?
All right, let's move on.
Let's make a transition somehow.
What else are we going to do?
All right. Let's do it. I'm going to make a transition, a smooth one, a graceful one. And I'm going to go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
I mean, what does this all mean? This means that if you don't listen to Native people and if you don't center our governments and our communities when you define our identity and you come up with solutions, then you end up making the problem worse.
What do some of the most prominent Indigenous celebrities, politicians, and cultural leaders have in common? They're not actually affiliated with the tribes they claim to have ties with. More and more so-called Pretendians are being unmasked, accused of fabricating their native heritage.
Pretendians as a story are really important right now, where we're rebuilding our nations and making serious strides as people. Because with that rising, there's opportunity. And it seems that like for every 3 opportunities, Pretendians take 2 of them.
Some Pretendians fake their ancestry to accumulate power, reshape their public image, or obtain benefits meant for Indigenous people. While motivations vary, risk of exposure or accountability remains low.
You will not believe how many of these fakers are out there. We found Pretendians in Hollywood, Pretendians in government, even Pretendians in prison. In every episode, we'll tell you a wild story about who they hoaxed and what they got away with.
In Pretendians from Canadaland, co-hosts Robert Jago and Angel Ellis reveal unbelievable stories of audacious fraudsters and investigate the complex phenomenon of Indigenous identity theft. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from Pretendians. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So Kevin, this is a little bit out of format for us, right?
Yeah, usually, when we do a series, I mean, it's a limited series, but when we do them, usually it's like looking at, I'm going to say maybe one story. This is more, it's a limited series, but it feels more like an anthology, right? As we go to different stories on this theme. And, also the format is a little bit, like we've seen more of this, but sort of like the 2-person, I don't want to call it the buddy-buddy thing, but where you have 2 people sort of bouncing stuff off of each other and, that kind of thing. So it's different than, say, something like a Connie Walker podcast that would sort of be like in the same cultural silo as these kinds of stories, but it's just done very differently.
Now, Laura, I will tell you, the first time I heard the expression Pretendians was in about this time last year in 2023 when the outlet that I work for by day, New Hampshire Public Radio, did a story about these like prominent New Hampshire activists. One of them was a state rep, Sherry Gould and her husband, and then some other people.
Micmac tribe is what they said?
They claim to be part of the Nulhegan band of the Coosac Abenaki Nation. Abenaki Nation. And they have basically been like big advocates for all these like things in New Hampshire, and they get called upon to be on talk shows and like show up at things. And they basically have no link to tribal stuff, and genealogists have been on the case. And there's like a big thing in New England around this where people who claim to have tribal ties and do a lot of advocacy apparently don't have tribal ties. So that was the first time I ever heard this expression.
Right.
Have you ever heard about Pretendians before? Has this been something that's been on your consciousness before?
Well, I mean, everybody, like the Elizabeth Warren situation, I think is the one that most people have heard about because Trump was always like, Pocahontas, like doing his whole thing about that.
Yes.
So I don't think Pretendians, but I think leading into this, the examples they gave were things like, I was like, oh, I remember that Rachel Dozier lady.
Yep.
Oh, but I thought she was pretending to be black. Oh, wait, initially she was pretending to be Indigenous, and her name was Faith Eagle Nebula.
Incredible.
What a name. So I thought like leading in with cases that you had heard about was good. But in terms of me and something I think about, like my dad always used to say, because my dad was adopted and he was like, I'm a Native American Indian. I'm like, yeah, sure you are. Right. So it's like, I'm always curious. I mean, this might be the year. I know I've said this before that I actually do my DNA test and find out if he was lying or not lying. It just sort of fascinates me that this is something that so many people want to claim a tie to for so many different reasons, like political reasons we hear, better treatment in jail reasons, I don't know, give some better stature in some communities if they say this and people are going to look at them in a more favorable light. I don't know. Once we got into this and we heard all these different stories, This was so much more widespread than because I had heard a few handful of cases. I didn't realize it was like such an epidemic.
Oh,
if
yeah.
that's the word that. Yeah, like I was like, holy wow. Well, Johnny Depp, like
yes,
fucking Johnny Depp.
Oh yeah,
fuck him.
Like I'll tell you, when Julia, who did this story for an HPR, started doing it, it was about like one or two people, and the story ended up being about like a whole bunch of people.
Right.
Because when she started talking about it, sources were like, "Did you know that the Pouliot's also blah blah blah? And did you know that the so and so?" And like. Next thing you knew, it ended up being this months-long story, like where she had to like, it is a thing. Toby, so this is obviously outside of our format, and every episode is very different, right? It looks at like a very different kind of story. Do you think that's working?
I do. It does make it a little uneven. Like, I didn't think all the stories were equally sort of fascinating. I do think they make the right choice in starting off with the story of Grand Chief Guillaume Carl.
You know, they don't want me to be native. I don't give a shit. I don't care, because you know what? What I know about natives and what they know on reserve is completely, erratically different. And they'll pay for that.
It's entertaining in a sort of get a load of this guy type of way. But he also, like, his case sort of familiarizes you with different things that will come up again and again. And I think particularly the idea of a status card, in that Indian nations can issue cards that sort of certify that you're not a Pretendian, right? You're part of that nation. And so this comes up again and again. And then Guillaume Carl, who just seems like a complete buffoon in a lot of ways, he sort of starts his own like fake tribe and issues cards for $80 to any, you submit a DNA sample from you or perhaps a family pet
dog
that he sends off, and they all come back saying something that allows you to become a member of this tribe that he made up. And so he's made a ton of dough, and then all these people get, I can't imagine they're like wildly lucrative benefits, but they do have this card in ways in which it can help them. So I thought that was a really good way to start it, because you kind of get this extreme example. You kind of get familiar with some of the issues that are involved, and then they get into sort of more niche things. And again, I kind of found a couple of the episodes more interesting than some of the others.
Yeah. So Kevin, what do you think about Carl? Because that is where the series begins.
Yeah, I agree that there are varying formats between the first 4 episodes that we've heard. But it was also a good one to start off with him in this interview, because it does demonstrate sort of what's at stake and some, food for thought. So like when you understand what the term Pretendian is and you start thinking about, well, why would somebody want to do that? First of all, it's just way too easy to just say, oh no, my middle name is Flying Eagle and that's sign me up, because there are different situations where, oh yeah, you might be able to get a certain student loan, or if you belong to the Pequot tribe, well, you're going to get a cut of the casino or things like that. It opens up this whole idea of these other reasons why it's so hard to detect. Like, who knew that like being Indigenous was like good academic cred if you're in academia? Or the amazing one is sort of like, hey, when you go to prison,
that was interesting.
You get all this different stuff.
In Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of, like, I know you get like a different menu if you're Muslim and you're in some prisons, and like, so some people say, but
high conversion rate to Islam in prison.
Yeah. Well, maybe not just for the food,
but myriad reasons.
Yeah, for myriad reasons.
Let's be honest about that.
But it's just way too easy for them to just check in and say, are you Muslim, and check mark, and that's the end of it. In Canada, it's like, are you Indigenous? Okay, check mark, there you go. And now you can go do the arts and crafts too, and you can do all this other stuff. And I mean, it's one of the effect ends up being, as we hear, that statistically it reads as if 1/3 of prison inmates in Canada are Indigenous. And no, it's that 1/3 of inmates are saying they're Indigenous, and the actual Indigenous population is much lower. But the effect ends up being that it just creates this image problem that, oh no, all these Indigenous people, they obviously are the most problematic because they're filling up our prisons.
Right.
And that also probably has effects on different resources and other things like that. And so it's more than just like snickering and winking and saying, oh no, I've got Indian blood in me, and so I can do all this other superpowers in the woods and shit. That's stupid stuff that people have been saying. It's actually a real problem on the reservation and off.
So I will just say the thing that's interesting to me about the Pretendian conversation that I did learn it during Julia's reporting where they talk about it here, and I think it's really important, is that one of the things that I have learned is that one of the hallmarks when people are investigating so-called Pretendians is that when people are really offended about being asked about their heritage, that is a red flag. Because conversations about heritage, about tribal ties, about who your ancestors were are very, very common in Indigenous communities, and they're actually welcomed in Indigenous communities. Like, who was your grandmother? Who was your aunt? Like, talk about your lineage. And like, people are very proud to talk about their lineage. And, so if you were to ask somebody who claimed tribal ties, oh, who are your relatives? They typically would not say, that's offensive. Why are you asking me that question? And it's very often
because you're lying about it, and it's clear.
That wouldn't be the assumption.
Yeah. It's way too easy to just say it because the paperwork issues and things like that is hard.
And honestly, that if someone truly didn't know but had tribal ties, they would say, I truly don't know, but I know that I know how to find out. Like, and there would be like an answer. But it's like people who don't, like the answers of like, I'm adopted and the story has always been, or the someone's like the Buffy St. Marie story, which is like disappointed boomers everywhere, but like was so fucking obvious the entire time. It really was. Like when that story came out in the CBC and they talked about how she came from this Italian family in Massachusetts, and there was never any evidence that she was anything other than this girl from Massachusetts. Like, it's almost funny. It's almost funny that she got away with it for that long.
I'm wondering if Toby's going to mention the anti-littering campaign from when we were children.
Toby, you want to talk about that?
It's just, if you're of a certain age, on TV you saw there's a very famous campaign where it shows a guy in a canoe, like kind of dressed up like sort of a stereotypical Indian from the 70s. With like a buckskin coat and feathers in a headband and stuff. Anyway, he's like canoeing along this river, and then there's all this trash. And at the end, like a little tear trickles down his face, and it's anti-pollution ad. Well, it turns out the guy was actually Italian. Like he didn't have, he wasn't Indian at all. He was an Italian guy, which is just nuts.
I mean, my favorite is the Hell's Angel guy.
Yes.
Casper. I mean, you've got like the number 2 in the Hell's Angels, who's like, hey, guess what? I'm Indigenous. And he's just like, I love how they were like, some people find Jesus, he found his spirit in him. That was one of my favorite lines in this.
Wait a fucking minute. Are you telling me Casper became the fry bread maker? What?
Yeah, he leaned in. Like that dude was legit. When he went to prison and he said he wanted to become an Indian, he became an Indian.
He like leaned into it, and then he was like making the bread that was like the traditional bread, and like he was like all in with this thing. But it's like terrifying because he's like a Hell's Angel like boss. He's in there for conspiracy to commit murder, and then he's like, surprise, I'm Indigenous. They just give him this program. He has like his own private cell. It's like when you were like going to college and you didn't want a roommate. And so you'd be like, oh, I have like whatever. I want a single or whatever. And so he gets like his single unit. He gets better phone calls, better food, spiritual guidance, and ultimately a reduced sentence. But then the flip side of that is then you have Norman, who is like the actual Indigenous prisoner. He's like traumatized about the, residential school. So he's like painting a mural, and they're like, get over it, Norman. And then they transfer him into like the super scary unit. He can't talk to anyone on the phone. He can't talk to his lawyers. And then they put him in a mental health unit. And then he's like, this is scary. He ends up getting stabbed, airlifted. All this shit goes down. So the Hell's Angel guy gets out and early, and he's in a halfway house. And this guy is like getting stabbed to death because he painted a fucking mural. Like, seriously?
But Laura, you can see why Casper, again, would just take advantage of this, because those are really great benefits, but not as great as the benefits that you get with us on Patreon.
Not as great.
Not as great. It's way better if you go to patreon.com/partners in crime media.
Don't be a pretendian. Just join our Patreon.
Just don't be a pretend-atreon.
No, I'm just saying, it's just easier to join our Patreon than it is to spend your whole life lying about your tribal ties.
Yeah, be proud of the fact that you're supporting us on Patreon. At the leading off level, you get exclusive content like the Crime Writers on Aftershow, Toby's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. We also have the Married with podcast. We got an upcoming live event where Rebecca and I will dish out relationship advice on Patreon on June 19th. Also coming up on Patreon this summer, going to get the whole season of Rebecca's OPP, Other People's Problems. her quiz show, where the three of us have all appeared on and have had varying levels of success. If you join us at the Bricker scale, you can hear the exclusive Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast. And if you come in at the Let's Do What We Do level, you get all episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. And remember, if you're a deep diver, you can watch and partake in Toby's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. When he records it, you get to see it long before it comes out as an audio podcast for everyone. The next episode coming out is The Good Girls and Ordinary Killing. And Toby, who were your guests?
It was Lauren Bright Pacheco and Simone Paget.
And we have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Staying with the high-end kitchen appliance theme that I seem to be enjoying, everyone should go for it once in their life, because they're only going to have to go for it one time and get themselves a KitchenAid mixer. I've had mine since 1998, guys, so that's why it's one of my Amazon lists. Get it once. You only need to buy it one time in your whole life. You can use it for everything, including making pasta.
And Toby, what are your listener-inspired deep cut recommendations?
Well, I can't quite believe this exists, but it sounds awesome. Nerd Wax Glasses Wax Single Stop Sliding Glasses Anti-Slip Eyewear Retainer, as seen on Shark Tank.
Does that go on the glasses or the nose?
I don't know. That's all. I just read
yeah.
you everything I know about this product.
Okay, sorry.
The second one is both listener and Kevin Flynn inspired. He pointed this one out. The Nissin Top Ramen Oriental Noodles, 3 ounces. I don't know the country of origin for this company. I think the idea was to make sort of a pretendiental joke as part of it. But it could be authentic. I don't know. I don't claim any knowledge. So that's it.
All right.
Those are great. Remember, shop us first when you go to Amazon. Go to amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. We earn commissions on all qualified purchases.
That's right. Go to our Amazon link, buy all the stuff you would have bought from Amazon anyway. Maybe you'll help the show out a little bit while you do that. Right, Kevin? All right, Kevin, before we end the business section, I have to ask you a very important question.
Yes.
Do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Ruth O'Grady and Jenny Taylor.
Ruth.
Bless you.
Jenny, bless you. Still no salve. I can't believe it. All right. Maybe someday, Sav. Maybe someday. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon, guys. And thanks to those of you who listen to the business section anyway, hoping to hear your name week in and week out. I'm rooting for you, too. I really, really am. Kevin, does thus end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now. So, Kevin, who's sponsoring the podcast this time around?
Well, it's our friends from Quince.
Ooh, oh my God.
The weather's getting warmer. Time to ditch the jackets and sweaters and shorts and tees. Just get ready for summer. Why waste money on clothes that will only last one season?
Why? Why do it?
Why do it? Go to Quince.
Kevin, did I not just buy you the best shirt?
Yeah, it's funny because I have here this first bullet point. Quince has all of the seasonal must-haves like
linen shirts.
100% European linen shirts from $30.
I literally just bought you a European linen shirt from Quince.
It was wonderful. It fit great. It held up great in the wash.
Yeah, I love my linen shirts from Quince. Love them.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to wear it all summer long. And you wonder, how do they get things at these great prices? You should rest assured that Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices along with premium fabrics and finishes. And you look good AF.
Upgrade your wardrobe. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime. Okay, Kevin, so who's our next sponsor in this podcast?
We're sponsored by Shopify.
I know them.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about sleuthing partners that get things done, like Frank and Joe.
Oh, yeah, Frank and Joe.
Who? Frank and Joe who?
I don't know who Frank and Joe are.
The Hardy Boys.
Oh, please. That was a boys' book.
Okay.
I don't want to be gendered, but come on.
All right, what about Bess and George?
Oh, they were Nancy Drew's friends.
Yes, they were. They got it done. How about Holt and Steele?
From Remington and Steele?
Yeah, what were their first names?
Remington.
Steele.
And Stephanie?
Stephanie Zimbal's was Laura
Oh,
Holtz.
I don't know.
Yeah, talk about perfect partners when it comes to solving crimes, but what about the perfect partners when it comes to growing your business? That's you and Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Whether you're selling sleuthing supplies or marketing mystery merch, maybe it's those online courses for cat detective school. Shopify will help you sell everywhere.
Kevin, have you ever bought anything online? Shopify is everywhere.
Yeah, it is. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever or whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. And Shopify helps you turn, that even includes like out the back of your mystery machine.
That's right.
You can sell the swag. And Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout.
Sign up for a $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
Now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
A&E's crime and investigation event, The Pursuit, returns with a new, unprecedented season of 60 Days In.
This time, we're going in
As a united front. Together as one team.
with one unified mission.
We are determined to expose.
What's really going on? Get off! We signed up for this.
Would you?
60 Days In, new episode tonight at 9. Part of The Pursuit, a crime and investigation event only on A&E.
So, Toby, there's a really interesting episode about an alleged pretendian serving in a prominent office, the governor of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt. What do you think about Kevin Stitt, and what do you think about this episode about him?
How much time you got, Rebecca?
I have all the time in the world.
This guy is one loathsome motherfucker. Look, Kevin Stitt is the governor of Oklahoma, and he, although apparently throughout his life did not actually identify as this, as part of his gubernatorial campaign, I believe we hear an actual song from one of his advertisements that refers to this, claims to be a Cherokee. I did look it up. To be a Cherokee, you have to be 1/16th Cherokee, and your Cherokee ancestor has to be registered on the 1924 Registry of the Eastern Cherokee. But there's a couple things that make this especially sort of offensive. One is he basically uses his supposed Cherokee heritage as a way of kind of covering his sort of appeal to racism against Indians. In Oklahoma that's like sort of the end of the Trail of Tears in some ways. And there's huge Indian population, reservations, Killers of the Flower Moon took place there, all this. And speaking of Killers of the Flower Moon, the reason why he can claim Cherokee heritage is not because he actually is a descendant of a Cherokee, but because one of his ancestors bought membership into the Cherokee tribe in order to grab land that had oil. And so it's just all around. It's not just fake. It is fake in the most pernicious way, in which it was just a scam to rob people who had, legitimate claims to the land.
When you think about who's an Indian, you could be 1/500th, 1/1000th. I've actually got my Indian card. My 6 children with blonde hair and blue eyes, they all have their Indian card. So our police are having a tough time because you can't tell who an Indian is and who's not an Indian in the eastern part of Oklahoma.
There's nothing about it that sits well. I mean, they talk about how maybe the Cherokees will kind of fling him from the tribe, which sounds like a good idea. But they do play, is it an ad or maybe is that a speech where he's talking about, well, if an Indian hits your car, there's nothing you can do about it. And I don't think that's
he's on
fair.
Tucker Carlson or something like that.
Yeah. And it's just like, dude, it's a treaty. The issue is not
between nations, like legitimate nations.
Special privileges is that you have a treaty and you have to respect it.
Oh, no, but it's within the state of Oklahoma, Toby. You can't have two different rules within the state of Oklahoma. It's so nutty that they don't well, no.
And that's not even really what it is.
I have a question. Do you think that it's a lack of understanding or a willful pretending not to understand to gain political points? That's always the question I have about a lot of these kinds of talking points. It's hard because I cannot believe that he doesn't understand that it's a treaty between two nations that he actually does not have any jurisdiction over.
I don't know much about him in particular. I do know that a good friend of mine used to cover the Senate Indian Affairs Subcommittee in DC. And he was just like, John McCain was constantly having to remind people that these aren't handouts we're giving. We are fulfilling treaty obligations when we're delegating this money. I mean, I think it is political points. Kristi Noem, I don't know if you guys have been following this, but this is within the last week, has said that people who work for, I think, state universities can't use either pronouns or tribal nation designations in their emails on their academic institution email signatures. And I think every single reservation in South Dakota has said that she is not welcome on their land. So, it's not just Oklahoma, right? There's like this sort of antagonistic relationship in a number of states.
I don't know what shocks me anymore, but the fact that Kevin Stitt is like talking about his blonde hair, blue-eyed children with their Cherokee cards.
Yes. He says the quiet part out loud, right?
Well, it's the political equivalent of saying some of my best friends are.
Yeah.
And it creates a permission structure for him to be like, well, I'm saying this and I have Indian blood. I have an indigenous heritage in my background. And just to be the excuse of now I can treat Native Americans like shit and disregard our obligations to their nation. It's like ends up being very dog whistly. And especially as, they dug a little deeper and found out, that quote unquote indigenous heritage was purchased, along with stealing a lot of oil. So good on you. There's a lot of winking like that anyway. When people talk about DEI, it's just a wink at, I can't say that word, but I can say this. But we all know what the fuck you mean.
Right.
And so it's just sort of political cover so that he can turn a whole other group of people into boogeymen for his base.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things like that when people start talking about certain things. DEI is one of those things where it's like, that definitely doesn't mean what you think it means, first of all. And second of all, it's barely dog whistle at that point. It's just saying, you're just saying what you're saying. It's really amazing. So Laura, I do want to talk about the choices of music in this series, which I think are just great. There's like a line at which music can be so on the nose that it's like sometimes music is on the nose, I hate it. When the music is so on the nose, like over the top on the nose, that it's like amazing. I think that's where this podcast is landing right now. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I don't know who wrote this original music, but at the end or like in different episodes, there'll be actual lyrics that relate to something that just happened. And at first I was like, wait, am I hearing this correctly? And I was like, oh no, this song and these lyrics are specifically in response to what we just heard. And there was one that was like, I guess I'm an Indian now or something. And I was like, this is amazing.
Imagining we're braves and maidens all day long. We'll paint our faces, wear a headdress with great pride. In this little game we play, we'll let our spirits rise.
We've heard original music before. We've heard music that's tailored to certain times and places and nostalgia, but this was like actual original lyrics. And I wish I had pulled some of the lyrics. I'm sure you guys can pull some here.
You probably couldn't say them again, Laura. It would sound weird if you said them.
It would sound weird if I said them because whatever, I can't sing. But
that's not the reason. That's why we don't have you rap.
I can't rap either. But I just did like a couple verses that were just absolutely specific and tied into what you just heard in a way that made you then think about it again as you were listening to the lyrics.
Yeah. This is a very interesting episode, which is the fourth episode that we listened to, which is the most recent episode that's out about this woman, Jacqueline Keeler. Now, she is a person who looks into Pretendians, but she also does a lot of other really high-profile advocacy, for instance, to get sports teams to change their names. And in some successful cases, she's actually gotten that done. She gets mascots to be taken away or tries to get mascots to be, sunset and so forth. But she also has the podcast identifies as a troubling record of outing people as Pretendians by putting them on this list of people who, quote, need to be investigated or looked into, and how that is journalistically and ethically not great. Kevin, this is an interesting episode because it's like, I think it's clear that the host, in particular Angel, are like, your heart's in the right place, but your methods not so great. And she gave them an interview. And so it's interesting to me to think about, like, the framing of the episode sort of being about her practices here and then her participating in the episode. Like, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, she just seems like one of these advocates who've just gone too far. Not a bad person, but somebody who clearly doesn't understand the consequences of her unfocused work. You know, the idea being, oh, well, you know, if you're being slandered by my list, it's a great opportunity for you
to clear your name.
To clear your name. Well, why did you sully my name in the first place? You just don't get it. There's a rumor that you're Pretendians. Well, prove that I am. Don't make me prove I'm not.
There's a rumor that you're a child molester. Let's put out a list of people who might be.
I have a Google Doc going. Anybody can throw in another name. You know, that's just... It's strange because in it, like, you know, you go on from being sort of motivated from advocacy. It just seems like more like an obsession, that it's like you just want to catch as many fish in this net as you possibly can, and you don't care. You know, you can catch a lot of tuna with that net, but you're also getting a lot of dolphins, and maybe it's time to rethink the tuna net, right?
Right.
It seemed to me like the real issue is just procedural. It's like that list should have been private, shouldn't have been made available to anybody. Like if she has a list of people she wants to investigate, that's fine, but don't make that list public.
Don't share with anybody.
You just investigate the people. And if you find somebody who doesn't check out, like you can put that out there, but don't just be like, I got questions about all these people. And then people will just make assumptions. It's like, well, if you got questions about them, there must be like some evidence that leads you to this conclusion. And the fact is that I think what I got out of it was that it was sort of a lack of evidence is what brought her there. And it was, you know, that can be for a whole bunch of different reasons that have nothing to do with whether you have the authentic sort of lineage that you claim.
Who doesn't love the idea of an open sourced sex offender registry? Let's just start throwing names on there, you know?
It's basically like a public hit list at this point.
You're right.
And then, I mean, we had that one guy who was getting targeted, and it creates that culture of like mob mentality in the way that people are going to respond to the names on this list and like do their own work.
Yeah. And it's hard and it takes away your credibility, especially if you're an advocate. It's sort of like being called a plagiarist if you're a writer, right? Like, and it is interesting, Toby, the issue that it brought up, which was interesting to me, is that for different people and in different tribes and in different ways of affiliation, there are different ways of having connection, right? And one of the standards that they say is that if a community claims you, then you can claim them. And so you don't have to have a card, or you don't have to have a living relative, or you don't have to have a whatever. And it's like,
it's not up to you to purchase the card to get in.
Exactly.
It's the nation recognizes you.
Right.
Right. I mean, maybe this is what you were saying, but I don't necessarily think that all the criteria are universal.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
I think that the Cherokee is probably the biggest nation, which is why that criteria is best known. But yeah, I would assume that different nations have different checklists that people have to be able to fill out.
Kevin, one final question.
Yeah.
We haven't heard the Johnny Depp episode yet.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Why?
Can you believe that he got away with playing Tonto?
No.
In the Lone Ranger?
I couldn't believe it at the time.
No.
Could you?
No. Okay, first of all, Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp in the same movie.
Yeah.
Doesn't age well, but neither does the fact that he's playing Tonto and he's got white war paint like covering his whole face.
Yes.
And
brown face, white face over brown face.
It's like Tropic Thunder, right? It is the strangest thing.
Yes.
But he also...
Except Tropic Thunder was satire of that.
Right. Exactly. But it also is sort of another excuse where it's like, you know, if family lore has misled you that you think that you have native ancestry, I mean, that's one thing. But whether you believe that in good faith or not, to sort of use that as like, well, I can do this because I'm 1/8 Cherokee or whatever, you know, it's acting in bad faith. And it's a kind of, you know, it is racial identity theft. But for reasons that are sometimes really vain.
If you're shopping while working, eating, or even listening to this podcast, then you know and love the thrill of the hunt. But are you getting the thrill of the best deals? Rakuten shoppers do. They get the brands they love with the most savings and cash back. And you can get it too. Start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Nike, Walmart, and Zappos. And even stack sales on top of cash back. It's easy to use. And you can get your cash back through PayPal or check. The idea is simple. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cash back. Download the free Rakuten app and never miss a deal. Or go to Rakuten.com to start getting the most bang for your buck. That's RAKUTEN.
Pick up your ultimate DIY companion with a skill power tool at Menards. With power and precision at your fingertips, tackle any project with ease. From drilling to sawing, sanding to driving, Skill has you covered. Engineered for efficiency and durability, Skill Power Tools deliver quality results every time. Save big on Skill Power Tools. And don't forget to check out our flyer on Menards.com for all the great deals happening now.
Save big money at Menards.
Not everything in life is flexible, but at Capella University, your education can be. With our game-changing FlexPath learning format, you're empowered to fit education into your life without putting other priorities on hold. FlexPath lets you set your own deadlines and adjust them when needed. You can take courses at your own speed and move on to the next one when you're ready. Imagine how a flexible education can make a difference in your life at capella.edu.
Here you are, BPMs high, sweat dripping, body moving, tongue panting. You're working hard, real hard, and you're thirsty. You need vitamins, nutrients for peak performance and energy. And your plants do too. Aw, I mean, just look at the little guy. Water-soluble plant food from Miracle Grow is full of essential nutrients. Just a little scoop into your watering can and boom, instant feeding and bigger, more beautiful plants. It's kind of like a sports drink for your plants. You may have to suffer from heat, but your plants do not.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Pretendians from Canadaland? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
I'm going to go mild thumbs up. I wasn't really sure in the beginning sort of what the format of this podcast was going to be. I feel like there was a little bit of, is it going to be kind of like some people chatting, or are we going to have interviews? It kind of didn't feel quite as structured in terms of where it was going until I got into it and I realized, okay, we've got separate stories. Each episode is a separate story that relates to this issue of Pretendians. And I think it's fascinating because I'm like, why are people doing this? How many people are doing this? How are people getting away with it? And I think we get those answers in this. It's definitely something I learned a lot listening to it. There was a lot of get a load of this guy on more than one episode. And it's not like typically in our wheelhouse when I think of what we listen to related to crime or the type of podcast we listen to. But at the same time, they weren't super long episodes. They each profiled something, you learned something, and food for thought. So mild thumbs up.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Pretendians?
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up. I felt like each episode had really interesting things in it. Episode 1 and episode 3 had enough heft to them to carry the entire time length of the episode. I thought 2 and 4 had very interesting points to make, and I'm glad I listened to them, but they seemed a little bit thinner as far as the amount of content they had. So those felt like they were stretched a little bit. I think that's kind of part of the problem with doing anthology things where you can't kind of divide up your story in ways that make sense. That to me was the only drawback, is that of the 4 episodes we listened to, half of them seemed as though it's not really that they were padded, but it just seemed a little bit thinner than the other ones, which I just thought were really interesting throughout. You know, I give it a thumbs up, and this is unusual for me, but I'll probably listen to future episodes just because I thought the first 4 all kind of addressed really interesting aspects of this issue that I wasn't super familiar with. So I'll be keeping my eye out for future episodes.
Kevin Flint.
Yeah, I'm a mild thumbs up. This is an interesting topic. Nobody's been covering this. And it's great to have 2 Indigenous hosts kind of dig down into this and give us different examples of why this is a problem and how it manifests itself into bigger issues here. Some of the banter feels a little forced, when you say, give me that sheet of paper and I'll pretend like I've never seen what's on it before. And I'm completely surprised about the direction of this. Okay, it's, that falls flat. But some of the other sort of seeming like very natural discussion where, they share their views, I thought was interesting. As far as topics go, this was something that was not something I give a lot of thought to, but it does give me a lot to think about. So I'm going to be thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up too. It's not perfect. I agree. And in terms of there are parts where the banter part is great, and then there are parts where it's not. And then there are parts too where there's clear retracts that may have been for legal or corrective reasons that you can hear. And in a podcast like this, that is basically like a chat format around tape, those have to be done better in order to be like cleaner. To Toby's point about the unevenness of it, I know in an anthology podcast, there's a temptation to take your strongest episodes and pepper them throughout. But I would make the argument that you should start with all of your strongest episodes in a show like this, because you really want to come out the gate like hard. Like I'd put like number 1 and 3 as number 1 and 2, and I'd put the Johnny Depp episode as number 3 if it were me. Like I would take all your strongest material, people are going to want to hear right away, front load it, and then, work on the other episodes and tighten them up in the meantime to make them as strong as your strongest episodes. Because I agree that 2 and 4, while super interesting, went on. There was also, I think, in this series, one interview that did not live up to its potential in terms of what it could contain in terms of pushback. That being said, I really like this podcast a lot. I think it's an interesting concept. It's fairly well executed. I really like the host a lot, and imperfect, but good and worth listening to. So yeah, thumbs up for me for Pretendians. Also, by the way, incredible podcast art. We didn't talk about that. Kendall dressed up like, it's incredible.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Podcast art. Fucking great aesthetics, great music, great art, like banger job, Canadaland, with your aesthetic around this podcast. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, I have to ask, do we have a cat of the week this week?
Well, Rebecca, in Monday's episode, you mentioned Polly's Pancake Parlor.
I sure did.
And, well, there's some sad news out of Polly's Pancake Parlor this week, Rebecca.
Are you kidding?
Yes. They announced the passing of Star, their beloved 36-year-old horse, often seen in the pasture across from Polly's. Star was the subject of many photos over the years, and this is coming from Jason Schreiber, New Hampshire.
Yes, New Hampshire animal reporter.
Friend who is no longer a journalist but cannot resist sharing journalist-type moves. So Jason posted a lovely picture of Star out in the field that he captured in 2022 with the fall foliage in the background. Rest in peace, Star.
Oh, poor Star.
I hope they get another horse up at the Polly's Pancake Parlor. We shall see.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe Rebecca mentioned that. And I'm like, I have to say this now.
Right now, people listening to this podcast are like, in New Hampshire, there's a town called Sugar Hill with a place called Polly's Pancake Parlor in it. And it is all true. It is all fucking true.
Like Candyland.
There's the Sugar Hill sampler place. I went there once with my grandparents when I was little, and I was like trying all the jams and jellies, and I tried this like jalapeno jelly, and I almost died. And I was like so red. I was having a coughing fit. It was like one of those moments in childhood that you never forget. Like, remember that time you almost choked to death on the jalapeno jelly?
Yes. There's also, by the way, wonderful, very charming double peak hike you can do there on a mountain, on a double mountain called Welsh Dickey. It's the cutest place in the entire world.
I don't think I'm going to be doing a double peak hike. How long does that take?
All right.
All right. I got wait a second. I'm writing this down. Cat of the week is a dead horse. Okay. Got it. There you go. Got it.
If
Thanks.
folks want to reach out to you and get that link out to Jason Schreiber's news, how can they find you online?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Laura Bricker. And Jason Schreiber is out there on the Twitter as well.
I know. And he still took, in my opinion, 2 of the greatest news images in the history of news. The girl in front of the fire and the whale dumpster, right?
Yep.
Oh my God, the whale dumpster video. I think I'm going to bring that out tonight, the whale dumpster video. I haven't thought about that in a while.
Laura, share it on Twitter so our folks can see it. All right, Toby Ball, if you want to be found online, how can you be found there?
At Toby Ball NH.
And Kevin Flynn, if you want to be found, how can you be found?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn, and the P stands for Pretendians.
Oh, Pretendians. Babe, thanks for joining my people. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. Follow the show everywhere. Crime Writers On, including on YouTube, Reddit, everywhere. But mostly, join our Facebook group. Trust me, it's worth it. It is rad there. The people are great. To a person. Find us on Facebook. There's a pin post there on how to join the group. All you need to know is one of our names. Say who's your favorite. We're not going to share it. It's a secret, I promise. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll also get all the other podcasts we make back there. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the wonderful Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we will neither fake Indigenous ancestry nor join a French-Canadian chapter of the Hells Angels. Right?
It is my chopper me. I'm going to ride the chopper.
On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Au revoir.
Just wait till I tell you about Ben Kingsley playing Gandhi.
I mean,
Pretendian.
It's just ridiculous.
Partners in Crime Media. Life doesn't have a pause button. That's why Capella University's FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines and adjust them if something comes up. Imagine how a flexible education can make a difference for you at capella.edu.